23 degrees Celsius this misty morning in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory. Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily, your daily dose of sunshine. I'm Maupe Oguyuso.
It's Friday. Hey, welcome. I'm Kayla Megwa, and it's the end of a very interesting, very busy week with everything happening. But before we start the show, Maupe, it's important for us to let people know what's happening with the Nigerian Bar Association.
Indeed, we understand that the MBA elections, beg your pardon, just for a moment there. The MBA elections are going to go on as scheduled in spite of the questioning of one of the managing director of one of the companies engaged to deliver the association's electronic voting platform, who's currently in the custody of the Department of State Services. So the MBA is reassuring lawyers across the length and breadth of the country that its elections will be going on as scheduled. So they should get ready to vote. They said there was an emergency meeting, and the MBA president, senior advocate of Nigeria, told us, as Channels Television, that the INEC members, that the service provider who is being questioned by the DSS over the identities and roles of companies and personnel involved in deploying the association's electronic voting infrastructure. Well, this marks the first official confirmation by the MBA leadership that one of its election service providers is being held by the country's domestic intelligence agency. So, but in spite of all of that, the elections are going on as scheduled. It's been quite a thing to watch out for, Kayla, these elections of the MBA. It does appear that every year, usually you have a bit of build-up to the elections. You can see the three main contenders there: Oyinkansola Badejo Kusoya, senior advocate of Nigeria; Olumuyiwa Akimboro, who is a senior advocate of Nigeria, as well as Lateef Akogbe, who is also a senior advocate of Nigeria. Very interesting scenario, even as they held their debate last week. I do know that our correspondent, Shola Shoele, deputy editor here at Channels Television, was the moderator of that debate, and I do know that there was a last-minute review of the rules which was meant to accommodate all of the candidates, but in spite of that, I know that one of them still wasn't present. But those who were present thought that the debate was fair in terms of how it was conducted.
And they got to express themselves and say what it is that they're going to bring to the fore. Many of them were talking about the use of technology, how to upgrade the MBA, so to speak, and how to bring it into the year that we are in, and of course the delivery of justice and how lawyers conduct themselves. These are things that have been going on for quite a while. It will be interesting to see what it is that they'll be bringing to the table. A lot of these people who are vying for this position were very vocal during that particular debate, and it's interesting to see a woman there. Nice to look at how the woman is bringing a woman's perspective to the Nigerian Bar Association. Why is this important for all of us? Because these are the people who defend us. These are the people who speak up for us in courts of law. And we see that the Nigerian Bar Association, over the years, has constituted itself as an agency that is one that has to be reckoned with. Everyone has to look to the MBA and listen. And when the MBA speaks, everyone takes it very seriously. Right now, the Nigerian Bar Association is doing something that the Nigerian people, well, at least residents of Abuja, we're very concerned about. The use of tinted permits, for instance. We've seen the Nigerian Bar Association be the ones to stand in the gap and say, no, you're not going to be able to do this, So the Nigerian Bar Association is very important, and it's something that we should look forward to. Every time there's a new president of the Nigerian Bar Association, his texture, or her texture, the texture of the president.
It's been years for a long time. Who knows? Will it change this time around?
But the texture of the president basically affects how lawyers will behave for quite a while, and that's a very important thing. So yes, we're looking forward to this one. Kudos to all the speakers and the people who are vying for all of these positions, and we wish them all the best in the next 48 hours or so.
Well, I know they're still campaigning, even though sometimes I kind of think that the model that the MBA adopts sometimes can be, it's supposed to be, how shall I say it now, it's supposed to be like a microcosm of our democracy. So all of that life that we see, all of that verb that we see, all of the arguments, discussions, perhaps typify what it is that we should expect in a democracy, disagreements. And I mean, that's what lawyers are really good at. But then there are also other, professional bodies that have a different way of approaching things. For instance, I got introduced to ICANN and how they conduct themselves. They instead have a council. You get elected into the council, and then there's like a turn-by-turn way of handling things. The difficult job is for you to get elected into the council, and then they already know, maybe for the next 2 or 3 years, who their next chairman is going to be. And even when you leave as chair, you don't just leave. You still stay on the council for a bit to still provide some guidance. So theirs is less rancorous. It's very conservative, very orderly. Some people say maybe we can learn a thing or two from how they conduct themselves.
Well, lawyers and accountants are very different.
They are. But I don't say, hey, without lawyers, what kind of country would we have? Who knows? So we wish them all the very best as they go to the polls this Saturday. They've been just to confirm that the elections are holding. If you've had any misgivings, and I think it was Mr. Chidi Odinkalu who brought, Professor Chidi Odinkalu who brought this issue to the fore, that one of the electronic providers had been held by DSS. And don't forget that, you know, the reason why this was important was because there had been allegations of establishment interference. So the lawyers had been a little wary that the authorities, Nigerian authorities, seem too interested in who's becoming the NBA president. And so there are questions as to what is the business of the state authorities in this particular, in the arrest of one of their own. But we'll wait and see how this eventually pans out, if it has any effect whatsoever on the process. But for lawyers who are interested in voting this weekend, the NBA is reassuring you that the elections will go on as planned, and all the best to the candidates, as we highlighted. Well, this morning we're entering environmental issues. That's what we're bringing to the fore this morning. We do know that we all know how the weather is currently. It's 23 degrees in Abuja, and it's still very misty. It's been raining all week, off and on, in parts of Lagos, and even in parts of the south generally, not just southwest. Now, south too, we've seen infrastructure affected as a result of this rains. We've seen landslides occur. Some people have lost their lives in the aftermath of the downpour that has hit some places. Lagos has been reeling somewhat from some sort of flooding. Normally we'll see flash floods, but these floods cannot be categorized as flash floods. And that's what we're going to be talking about this morning, because we've also seen the visit of the governor of the state and his deputy to some parts of Lekki. We saw him visit Shongotedo or Gombo. We saw him visit Chevron Drive and a number of other places that have now been affected by these floods. And this morning, we're speaking with two very gentle residents of Lagos. I do not know if they'll be gentle on the program, given the experiences so far.
It doesn't look like they will be.
But we will see about that. We have this morning Madam Stella Okengu, who is the CEO of Win Homes Limited, and also Mr. Stephen Akintoye, who are both residents of Lagos. Mr. Akintoye is also a real estate investor, chairman of SACI Holdings. They both join us virtually this morning. It's good to see you both this morning on our program. Thank you so much for joining us. I do hope that your homes have not been, your homes and businesses, I should add, have not been affected by the floods. But if they have been, because I imagine that's why you are here on the program, or maybe you have some experience to share with us, do you want to tell us what it has been like for you since the rains started? Did you have any palpitations? Is this what you expected was going to happen when the rainy season came in? Let me start with you, Madam Stella.
Thanks for having me. First and foremost, I must commend the Lagos State Governor and the Commissioner for Environment, Mr. Tokumbo Wahab, for the tireless efforts they are making to mitigate the devastating flooding currently affecting Lagos State. Leadership is tested in moments of crisis. However, as a stakeholder and an investor who has personally suffered from the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Road project, I believe that we must have the courage to ask the difficult but necessary questions. Yes, Lagos has always experienced flooding. This is not a dispute, but many residents would agree that what we are witnessing today appears more widespread and severe than in previous years. I believe that it is both reasonable and necessary for experts to objectively examine whether the aspects of the road design, construction, drainage system, and any departure from the 2006 gazetted alignment that they diverted in some corridors may have contributed in any way to this current situation.
All right, so that's going to be your first question. You want an investigation to know if there's been any diversion from the 2006 gazetted plan for the Lagos Coastal Highway. Let me come to Mr. Akintoye.
No, there is a diversion. There is a diversion on the 2006. I remember when it occurred. I was, I raised the concern not only about our investment that was affected, but also the possible environmental consequences of departing from the original gazetted route. At that time, many people dismissed the concern because they believed I was merely fighting for our estate. Today, I hope those concerns will be examined on their engineering and environmental merits rather than on emotion that we saw that they displayed when constructing the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Road.
Okay, we'll come back to you, madam, because I do know that Mr. Dave Umahi, tried to explain that they wanted to go with the original route, but that there were cables, undersea cables, passing through that original route. As I said, we'll come back to you, and you can tell us if another assessment was done to know if how the environment was going to be impacted by that diversion. But let me come to you, Mr. Akintoye. You are a resident and you're also a real estate investor. And we've seen in recent times the Lagos state government clamp down hard on real estate investors. As a matter of fact, also blaming them, because we're seeing right here, canals have been blocked, places that were not approved for sand filling have been sand filled. First, were you one of those accused? And then secondly, have there been times, if you're not one of those accused, have there been times when you, as a real estate investor, have, called perhaps the attention of your fellow developers to say, this manner in which you're going about this thing could have a dangerous consequence for the environment, given how some of your colleagues were going about developing?
My name is Stephen Akintayo, and it's good to be here this morning. I will say that, to be honest, Nigeria is a place sometimes where you do everything right and you can still end up being wrong. When the blame is shifted on developers, I think it's not fair, because before you develop anything, you buy a land, you get a permit, and from the point of getting your permit, it will take at least 6 months or a year or two. Some projects even take longer before the property is completed. And now this gives you opportunity for government agencies to come check. I mean, now we are not in any way affected by this, but a lot of our colleagues are affected. And we've asked questions, what has gone on? And the question has always been, we took, in fact, some of them, it was 5 years after acquiring the land, they started building. They got permits. The land have COO. So what we sense is that there are people who carry out sharp practices in government agencies, and these people seems not to be punished or held accountable, and they approve certain things. But what we also realize for the issue of the flooding is that most of the canal is blocked by vegetations and sand and other things, particularly when you look at the Ogompo. Mind you, the entire Lekki, is a marshy land, used to be called Morocco. It was rushed. There's no proper, design for Lekki itself. the water is bad. Most times you are seeing that a lot of even the drainage, the waste disposal is not good. So it's even seeping into the drinking water people use. A lot of people are relying on borehole. So it's a poorly built environment. The drainage are blocked. The canal is blocked. And at this point, when you then introduce a coastal road that is now above almost all the properties in that area. Because remember, when building, you have to look at the road level and make sure that it's from the road level that you pick your foundation. Typically, most of these areas, people ignore that, right? Now, of course, those who even have, do that. Now, coastal road is, I think, over 4 to 6 feet above the usual road level. And so water is finding it difficult to channel out, and that's part of what you're probably seeing happen. So it's a mixture of errors everywhere, and we just have to find a solution. But it's impressive to see that the government is concerned. Seeing the governor, the deputy, the commissioner move around to look for a solution is important, but we need to be preventive. Reactional leadership is not always the best.
Mr. Akintayo, I'm looking at those visuals, and you absolutely, yeah.
Mr. Akintayo, I think we owe you an apology.
Yeah.
We're so sorry for getting your name. I know it is Mr. Stephen Akintayo, not Akintoye. So apologies for that, please.
Well, Mr. Akintayo, looking at the visuals there, so this happens. I want to get you to be clear with us right now. Are you saying that because of this coastal highway construction, that the flooding this year is worse than the flooding previous years?
Definitely, absolutely. Because again, you have a road that is higher than every of the houses that it is passing through. There's practically no house right now in that entire corridor that has peaked have a foundation level from that coastal road. The coastal road is so literally you did a road that turns on the right, on the left to a valley of some sort.
So the engagements with this in mind, you're a real estate investor, you're a resident. Has there been what kind of conversations have you been having with the Minister of Works? Because he's defended this coastal highway with all his strength. So in the conversations with him, do you get the sense that he agrees with your assertion, or does he feel like you don't quite understand how we have done what is necessary and it just takes some time for things to level out? What do you get in your conversations with the Minister of Works on this particular matter?
I personally haven't engaged the Minister of Works. We run an institution, so it's not really a one-man business, and I'm mostly not, because we have investment in Dubai, US, and things like that. But I'm aware that a lot of our colleagues have raised that. Engineer Stella, she more than raised that. I mean, everybody knows that by now, And but I think I'm not even against the coastal road, road level, because again, this is well planned over the years.
Yeah.
The coastal road is not a new concept, and by the word coastal road, it was meant to be in proximity to the ocean, right?
Yeah.
And so it's also a way of preventing erosion. However, I think the challenge is once you move away from the gazetted line, which is more closer to the ocean, now you came into this almost, we can call it city center now. And so you move into the city center and created of some sort valleys. I mean, it's just
naturally flows into valleys. All right, so I'll come back to you in a bit. But let's talk with Stella Okengu. Madam Stella, so talk to us about the engagements with the Ministry of Works. How has it been? And what are the responses? And we both know why you're laughing, because you have been fighting for a while. And more grease to your elbows.
I said everything now.
All right, so let's talk about that. What are your feelers in your engagements with the Minister of Works, and what's the plan going forward based on the conversations you've had?
Anyway, what I'm going to say is that the engagement was unsatisfactory because I raised the issue of environmental impact assessment, and when I raised it, he literally shut me down, which I don't even want to remember my experience with the minister. But when this coastal route came, when I was, talking about it, raising technical questions, because I'm an engineer by profession, a lot of people thought maybe because I'm concerned about our estates. But the issue is that the old gazetted alignment, which is the 2006 gazetted alignment, has passed all the environmental assessments, everything. So I will say that the coastal road was built on emotion, because he mentioned then that he wants to save about 1,700 to 2,000 houses, which, if I'm not mistaken, but recently, I think last week, when the flooding started, he came back and said that the 1,700 houses that he saved in order to divert to our estate with all the demolition, almost 2,000 houses that they demolished, that they have to go back to demolish it again. When I heard it, I was like, wow, okay. So does it mean that people that they saved before, that he came out on national television and said that he saved, will now experience demolition? That is one thing about engineering, And let me say, you are a medical doctor, and you made a medical mistake. That's how engineering is. There is a 2006 gazetted alignment. Just follow it and achieve the coastal route. I'm not against. In short, why we even invested in that area, why the diasporans came to invest, is about because of the coastline there, so that we can be able to enjoy the environment, the beaches around there. You understand? But with destroying and demolishing our properties, I don't think our investors wants to come back again to Nigeria. Until now, I have been appealing for the compensation, but unfortunately, let me say that yes, part of the federal government are listening to us right now, but nothing has been done. So, we left our home country. I'm a United States citizen, returned home because I believe in Nigeria. We invested hundreds of millions of dollars, encouraged fellow diaspora in Nigeria to invest, and convinced foreign partners that Nigeria was ready for responsible investment. Many of those same people asked me a heartbreaking question. If an investor who followed the approved process can lose everything without compensation, what guarantee do they have? Sadly, I don't have that answer.
I mean,
it's a terrible thing, but it really left a bitter taste, because we have, like what Dr. Kintayo said, we have all the necessary documents. We even have coastal road right-of-way clearance certificate. So the coastal road does not have any jurisdiction in our area. So, but unfortunately, what happened to us was devastating. A nation that attracts investment, you know, is not only by constructing highways, but by demonstrating that laws are respected. Environmental impact assessment is robust. You know,
it's very heart-wrenching listening to your
sometimes
story,
when I
ma'am.
think about it, I supported the coastal road 100%.
Yeah.
I wanted it to come. When we heard it was coming, everybody was happy.
Until it came, and then let me ask you very quickly: has the road finally got to your area? Has it reached your area where you had your property?
Okay, Dr. Kinda, you can bear me witness. Immediately, I raised the technical question about the coastal road. The next thing they said that the minister gave an order that they should leave wherever they are and go to our estate and demolish and pass the road. The road just has passed our estate.
So the road has passed your estate now?
In the middle of my estate.
Has your estate experienced any flooding whatsoever?
Of course. Of course. But if they had passed the original gazetted alignment, what they would have done is to put an embankment, a struck embankment, just the way they did it in Chenage, 1312, you know, there's an embankment there, but they brought it into the city. You understand? It's not along the coastline again. They brought it saying that there is a marine cable. Marine cable cannot technically, let me say it in a layman language, cannot be on a land. Marine cable is a deep sea cable. It's inside the sea. It cannot even survive. It will melt, literally melt. So they favored some people, let me put it like that. And now those people, they want to go back and demolish their property.
Wow. Well, we'll wait to hear from the Lagos State government, because it does raise key questions. When the Commissioner for the Environment was speaking about mistakes that were made in terms of alignment and even the roads and drainage channels not being properly aligned, people raise questions as to, did they really have a handshake with the Lagos State government before this road was, conceived and built, much as it was a grand and fantastic idea? And in fairness, a lot of Lagosians are already beginning to use that coastal road, and it's relieving some traffic on the Lekki-Ekpe expressway, even the road to VI. So we're beginning to see that. But then, given what we're now saying, questions are now being raised by citizens as expected. And we wait to hear from the Lagos State government a comprehensive brief as to how exactly they reach the plans, the current plans for this Lagos Coastal Highway. We also want to hear from the Minister of Works, because, he held quite a number of stakeholder briefings, even though a few of them were controversial in terms of how he was willing to take feedback from those whom he had invited to that stakeholder briefing, and what exactly is transpiring now in Lagos. But so far, so good. We've seen the governor go around certain places, visiting affected residents. What is the Lagos State government promising people like yourself? Because much as, yes, the federal government is the one building this road, I imagine that it was the Lagos State government that allocated land to you. It was the Lagos State government that you dealt with to get all of the clearances that you need. If at the end of the day, its guarantees held no water, held no weight, what exactly are they saying to you now?
What happened is not the fault of the Lagos State government. I'm going to tell you this, because if the minister did what is right, first of all, we have Lagos State Building Control Agency, which is LAPSCA. They are the one that is supposed to be in charge of the demolition. What the minister is supposed to be in charge of is constructing the road. Lagos State Building Control Agency, when the demolition was happening, they were not the one that demolished. Dr. Kintayo, I hope I'm saying the right thing. At least you were there. They were, they were not the one that demolished. Everything that happened, it was the Ministry of Works that ordered the demolition, not the Lagos State government. So, literally, the Lagos State government, their hands were tied on this issue. I'm not saying it, I'm not that kind of person that will paint words. I'm telling you because I flew down from from America to Nigeria. I was around for almost 1 year, the highest I have been in Nigeria. I witnessed everything that happened there. So what the Lagos State government, what they are doing now, because number one, the compensation is being handled by the Federal Minister of Works. The demolition, everything, he handled everything. So the Lagos State government did not handle it. So what the Lagos State government is trying to do now with the Commissioner of Environment is trying to mitigate the damage that has been done. I saw when the governor was talking, he was trying to channel, he was telling them that this place, that they should channel some of the water into this canal in order. So they are trying, and they can't do more than what they.
Maybe I can add to it.
Mr. Kintayo, you have a different opinion?
No, not a different opinion. I just want to give some context. So, by Nigerian constitution, it's believed that some say 50 meters or 100 meters from the waterways belong to the federal government. However, this coastal road has created a situation whereby the federal government is probably even laying claims on more than 300 meters, to the shoreline in this axis. We have at least 5 different estates that we invested in. Out of 5, 4 were affected by this. In fact, one of it, the High Tech, which is the construction company office in Ibejuleki right now, is sitting on our land. Our lawyer through, by Safalano has written them, we've not heard anything. So you're seeing a good project, well intended, a great idea, good vision, but poorly executed. And I think that's the issue. A few ideas that I think if people in government are listening, first of all, set up a different compensation fund managed by both Lagos State government, federal government, and stakeholders, developers, who are affected, totally different from the Ministry of Works. You cannot be the judge in your own case, which we feel that's what is going on. And so, to be honest, and to be fair to the Lagos State government, it's a catch-22 situation. And it's, unfortunately, they are the ones that are bearing the burden of the fallout of issues like this. One of the things myself and Engineer Stella share is the fact that we have multiple residences and we also do business internationally. And the challenge is that we go tell, our colleagues in diaspora, come invest in Nigeria, come invest in Lagos State. And, before you know it, things begin to happen. And those people are looking at you and say, but you told us to invest back at home. You are the marketer for Nigeria. See what's going on. And whether it affects you directly or indirectly, you're still going to be affected because we know like I told you, we have 5 different properties we invested in. We have one that wasn't even affected. But even the investors, they are struggling to sleep. Oh, today we heard this about Coastal Road. Tomorrow we heard this, So investors are panicking. It has affected the industry in a great way. And to be honest, the real estate sector in Nigeria is terribly affected. The trust level is low. And when you look at what really can grow the economy, is the real estate sector. So I feel there's a need for all of us to come together and find a way to build trust. When you look at remittances to Nigeria, I can guarantee you that more than 60% of it is towards real estate. Now, I'm sure that is going down because people are now more concerned. And so I want to add that whenever government wants to do things, good intention, they need to be conscious of the PR aspect of it. Don't, because you can't say you want investors to come invest in Nigeria. At the same time, you're doing things in a way that it just gives the same Nigeria a bad name. It looks as if we don't respect investors, we don't treat investors right. We can just wake up and demolish any estates without considering other key factors. I've argued, and I'm saying it again today, if any developer who is a colleague of mine decide to build on a canal, decide to break the law, you can freeze and seal up their estates, demand that restitution is paid. For example, we need to build a new canal, right? You have to pay for it. But to destroy billions of naira worth of assets, which is not the developer's money, mind you, the developer money is in it, but he or she has also either taken money from the bank or he or she has gotten foreign investors. I'm currently in Stanford University on a mergers and acquisition program. We always say, don't destroy value. When it comes to building enterprise, you don't want to destroy value. Find a way to make sure that any money that has been invested in Nigeria is eventually protected one way or the other, so that you can signal to other people to say, we will protect your capital no matter what happens. But right now, it's not looking good for individual investors, institutional investors like us, who have invested not just as individuals but as a corporation. It's not looking good, and we're being hit on multiple levels. Our books are not looking good with all the losses we have been incurring.
Yes,
It's hard not to. Sorry, madam. I wish we had a little more time, to discuss this, especially that proposition of do not destroy value, especially when you look at our current situation, even sometimes the situation that government sometimes finds itself with, will I say, willful destruction, or willful ignoring of, certain places, or even where kidnappers are involved, where illegal money is involved, and government believes that the only way to teach people a lesson is that things that are acquired illegally will not stand. So I mean that conversation for me looks like it's another conversation entirely. But Mr. Akintayo, Dr. Stephen Akintayo, Lagos resident and real estate investor, chairman of SACI Holdings, and Madam Stella Okengwu, CEO of Win Homes Limited. We do have to thank the both of you. We sympathize with your experience. We still look forward to hearing from the Lagos state government, because much as you've said that they found themselves in a catch-22 situation and it wasn't really their fault, the truth is they still owe you a responsibility. We know that land resources are vested within the state government. They are the ones who have that. Yes, the federal government can ask for, and the state government, can grant the federal government's right of way, etc., etc. But they still, wherever it is that they have given some other people perhaps C of O, and cleared them, they still owe them some responsibility. So we'll wait to see if we hear from the Lagos state government, particularly on this particular account, while we also wait to hear from the Minister of Works on this issue as well. Thank you both for engaging with us this morning. All right, we'll take a break. When we come back, we did tell you about the NBA earlier. We will be talking about the elections and giving you a preview as the NBA goes into its polls this weekend. Please stay with us. Mr. Monday Obani joins us now, SAN. He is a new advocate of Nigeria. He's a legal practitioner and policy analyst based here in the FCT. Mr. Monday, we've claimed you for ourselves. But I suspect a part of me is telling me that you might be in Lagos at this point in time. It's good to see you as the NBA prepares for its elections this weekend, and you have written a little article saying that the NBA now needs to take a second look and make sure that they address credibility concerns to avoid another crisis. What precisely are you afraid of? What are your anxieties for this weekend, even as the NBA goes into another election?
Yeah, thank you for having me. Good morning. Well, the point is that over time, starting from 2016, NBA's election has been riddled with crisis in terms of post-litigation after the election itself. And it has given some of the stakeholders a bit of concern because we are the largest professional group in Africa, and we stand for the rule of law and ensuring that things are done properly, especially in the issue of governance. If you know that NBA plays a role in the advisory role, in issue of governance, issue of transparency in government. Now, if that particular body that has such a responsibility has a credibility issue when it comes to electoral process, then we have no right or moral right to criticize what goes on at the federal level or even at the state level at any point in time. And so it has been an issue. From 2018, we have always gone to court after each cycle of election. And stakeholders are saying, what is going on? We should be able to take a look at our process. Is there issue of credibility? And if there are issues, what do we do in order to ensure we have a free and fair election at every time we have election, coming up? So this year's election has also thrown up the issue. And then some stakeholders have queried some of the procedures, that will be adopted in the election. I said, can we get it right? And that is what I understand is the Attorney General of the Federation did. He may have titled it directive. It's not directive. I think it's advisory. The AG does not have any local standing to postpone an election or to call it off. The only right he has as the chief law officer is to put in advisory, which he has done. Can we look at some of the issues that they have raised, as stakeholders, and see what we can do so that we can ensure credibility at the end of the day? So that is presently what's going on. But the INEC met yesterday and agreed that the election must go on and that whatever issues that have been raised will certainly be addressed. That is what actually I understand them to be saying. So we are going on with the election tomorrow.
Mr. Obani, let's move on to something else. The Appellate Court in Abuja validating the guidelines of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, on the conduct on the 2027 elections, and this case that was instituted by the Youth Party, the case against INEC. So in that lead judgment, we're seeing that the decision of the court was that the YP lacked legal power as local standing to do what it did, and the party did not explain how the guidelines affected it and its members in the conduct of its primary elections for the nomination of candidates for the 2027 poll. So talk to us a bit about this judgment and what this means for the Youth Party going forward.
Yes, I will try to break it down in a very simple language so that even those who are not lawyers will understand what is actually playing out presently with the decision of the Court of Appeal yesterday. What happened is that at the Federal High Court before Justice Omar, the Youth Party came arguing that the amended electoral guideline of INEC contradicted some provisions of the Electoral Act. and the Constitution, and for that reason, that guideline should be nullified. Justice Omar looked at their reliefs and look at what they have brought as facts, concerning the issue of the electoral guideline. And I agree with them, saying, yes, the principle is that at any point in time, electoral guideline remains a subsidiary legislation. And in terms of hierarchy of law, subsidiary legislation cannot override a substantive legislation like Act of National Assembly or the Constitution. He agreed that the power to supervise, manage the electoral process resides with INEC. But in enacting guideline, the guideline must not contradict any provision of the substantive law enacted by the National Assembly. And according to the judge, the learned judge, he found out that some of the provisions of the electoral guideline contradicted certain sections of the Electoral Act. And for that reason, he nullified some portions of the electoral guideline of INEC. And INEC felt aggrieved, and they approached the Court of Appeal, which in summary yesterday said, one, that it is important we understand that INEC's power to regulate electoral process is derived from the Constitution. If you look at the provision of Section 153, look at the issue of paragraph 15, of the third schedule, part 1 of the third schedule, that it does give INEC power to actually regulate the electoral process, and that what they have done, in enacting electoral process, electoral guideline, is not inconsistent with any provisions of the Electoral Act, and for that reason, the electoral guideline was upheld. But the most important thing that the court decided, which is also very important for Nigerians to know, was the issue of the youth party that came to court. The court was of the opinion that they lack local standard, because in Nigeria today, the present jurisprudence about public interest cases is that for you to initiate and succeed in public interest case in Nigeria, you must show that you have the local, the standard, that you have the standing in order to bring that case. And Nigerian judiciary has adopted a very restrictive approach in interpreting the principle of local standard, starting from Abraham Adesanya's case up to the point where today, presently, in Nigeria, they have adopted that restrictive standing. And what do they usually mean by showing locals? You must show that you have suffered personal injury. Personal interest must be affected or threatened to be affected. And so the court found out that the youth party did not in any way brought before the court any, specific live issue, that they conducted primaries and their candidate were rejected, or that they were affected by the timeline to submit the party's register. They didn't bring all that before the court. They only came by way of a speculative, litigation, which is what INEC was saying, that it was purely academic. It was purely speculative. And for being speculative, that the court has no jurisdiction to entertain such a matter that was not a live issue. And so the Court of Appeal agreed with INEC yesterday that one, the youth party has no locus because they were not able to show to the court what injury have they suffered. Were their candidates rejected? Did they conduct a primary that was actually rejected by INEC? And so in the absence of those live issues, then the court was of the opinion that they have no locus, and the court shouldn't have given them any hearing whatsoever at the court below. So that is actually what happened. The court did not go really into the specific of looking at whether those electoral guidelines violated any right of the political party, because there was none. There was no issue of right that was violated presented before the court below. So the Court of Appeal was of the opinion that in the absence of those injuries being alleged and proven, then the court shouldn't have actually given them a hearing, that it was purely speculative, hypothetical or academic exercise that the court engaged in.
Because this Court of Appeal judgment is setting aside the judgment of the Federal High Court. It does bring to mind the issues that we have where a particular court will rule on something and then you take it to appeal, and then there's no, they say there's nothing here that can make us stand with what you said at this lower court. And then also the case of, bringing a matter to court and not being able to show what your matter is, if your damages are speculative and things like that. So talk to us a bit about the discipline that is required for these sorts of things, and how we can get people to stop, creating these sorts of scenarios, especially in our courts, that we need to do other things.
Yeah, in all this, I want to say that what you have said concerning the consequence, of the judgment, it means that the court have set aside what the lower court has actually given. But the point, look at the procedure. The Court of Appeal did not say that if INEC enacts any guideline that contradicts Electoral Act, that particular guideline will supersede the Electoral Act. No. What the court did not do, the court did not go into the substance of looking at the issue of whether the electoral guideline violates Electoral Act, because there was no injury. The party did not show any injury the electoral guideline has caused to it. So the principle of hierarchy of law is still being upheld by the Court of Appeal. The Court of Appeal is not saying by that decision that if INEC tomorrow wakes up and then probably enact an electoral guideline that contradicts a provision of the Constitution or the Electoral Act, that the court will uphold it. No, the court will not uphold it. Electoral guideline remains a subsidiary legislation. So in terms of hierarchy, the Act of a National Assembly is superior. But in this particular instance, the particular party that is alleging that there has been a violation of right did not present any right that was violated. So the court did not go into the specific examination of those electoral guidelines that violate their right, because no right was violated. They did not show evidence of primary election that was rejected, or that they were unable to submit their voters, the members register as a result of the timeline that was given by INEC. So in the absence of the right, being injured in consonance with the jurisprudence of local standard in Nigeria today, the court now held that there was nothing that was wrong with the electoral guideline as INEC itself, because there was no proof of any violation of the Electoral Act. So the position of the law still remains that INEC has the right under the Constitution to enact electoral guideline. We agree with that. But in enacting electoral guideline, it must not in any way override the provisions of either the Constitution of the Electoral Act. That law is also upheld. But whoever is coming to court over this public interest case must show, one, that he has locus, two, that the court has jurisdiction. So the court was saying that issue of jurisdiction, it was hypothetical. So the court shouldn't have engaged in it, because there was no right that was actually, wrong. There was no right that was actually violated. And in the absence of that, the court was not right to have actually delved into, nullifying the electoral guideline of INEC. That is actually what that decision is all about. If you look at even just some of Shaw's case, all of them upheld the supremacy of Act and Constitution over electoral guideline. It remains a subsidiary legislation, and we must all agree with that. And there's no court that will say that electoral guideline will override the substantive law. No, they will not say that. But in doing this, you must follow the procedural safeguards. You must show that you have suffered a wrong. You must show that you have locus. You must show that the court has jurisdiction. And in this instance, it was a hypothetical issue that the Youth Party has brought before the court, and not as a result of their rights being wronged or being violated. They didn't show that, and the court said that the court should not engage in such speculative exercise.
Mr. Monday Obani, we have to thank you, but I'm wondering, do you think that this matter is something that will get up to the Supreme Court? Because we do know that some parties, even though they did not go to court, could have benefited from this. What if they ask to be joined and it goes to the Supreme Court if they have suffered injury as a result of this non-alliance?
It's a very intelligent question. So we are still in a situation where some of us who are public interest lawyers are still insisting that the Nigerian judiciary must adopt a liberal approach with regards to local standards. They must adopt in order to, because governance issues involve corruption and, good governance. Other countries have adopted a liberal, mode. But the legal jurisprudence today in Nigeria with regards to locals is that we are still adopting a restrictive approach. You must show that you have suffered injury, not for the issue of governance. No, that should be done by the person who has suffered injury. That's what they are saying. So if it goes to Supreme Court and the Supreme Court now look at the issue of locals once again and look at it and say we must adopt a liberal standing, fine, it will now be the position of the law. But for now, the Supreme Court, if it wants to maintain its stand, if you don't show that you have suffered injury, don't bother coming to court on public interest litigation. Don't bother, because your interest must be shown to have been threatened or you have suffered injury before you can succeed on public, and that is the present position. So the Supreme Court may be asked to look at it again, sir. Can we look at this position of the local standard that it is very restrictive and it's not helping governance in Nigeria? Can we expand it? That I don't need to show injury, provided that what I'm fighting for is for the interest of the public. You must allow it to stand. So if it does, I hope that the Supreme Court will, because I know that the Youth Party may proceed to Supreme Court over this. The Supreme Court may have opportunity to look at local standard principle once again.
All right, we have to thank you very much, Mr. Monday Obani, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, for interventions on this on these matters. And we wish the MBA all the best tomorrow as it goes to the polls.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
That's where we draw the curtains on Sunrise today, this beautiful Friday morning. But I will still wish you a sun-filled day. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Yusuf.
Business Morning is at the top of the hour. I'm Kayla Megwa. Have a great weekend.